Now that the dust has settled from E3, I thought it would be nice to cap off my coverage with some final thoughts and address some of the things that my views have shifted on. I'm starting with Xbox, and at their conference, Cyberpunk 2077 was by far the biggest reveal. Cyberpunk 2077 has been a roller coaster for me. I started off being incredibly excited to see it at Microsoft's conference, but when I saw the non-gameplay trailer, I was severely underwhelmed. I didn't like the color palette, the atmosphere, or the kind of terrible narration that played over the whole thing. Then I found out that CD Projekt Red had a behind-closed-doors demo of the game. I really don't like this. It's been, 6 years since the game was announced? If they had the game in a playable state and were willing to have people look at it, why not just show everyone? I thought we were mostly past this kind of nonsense, and seeing some sort of gameplay at the Xbox conference would have assured everyone that the game is coming for real this time. But then I found out that Cyberpunk is an FPS, which is the last thing I expected it to be. I assumed it would be a third-person game just like The Witcher. So in light of that news, my interest is officially renewed, and now this game is guaranteed to be compared to Starfield. It turns out I was wrong. It sounds like Halo Infinite is actually Halo 6, but it's just an engine right now. I saw rumors about the campaign coming first before the multiplayer even. I don't know what they're doing here. It visually looks like the original Halo trilogy, so will they pretend Halo 4 and 5 never happened? I don't see how they can go forward with the current narrative while simultaneously removing things like the updated Spartan armor and abilities. If this really is a new Halo game with a campaign and not the multiplayer platform I thought it was, 343 has their work cut out for them. Overall, Microsoft did really well in terms of announcements, and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is now tied with Death Stranding for my most anticipated game, but most of those games that they announced, that one included, were not Xbox exclusives. Yeah, they had Gears 5 like I thought they would, and Forza Horizon 4 is coming like clockwork, but is that really going to make up for the deficit of large, first-party titles? Even if they manage to get Halo Infinite right when it comes out in the distant future, I still don't think that's enough to make the console competitive with the PS4, and at this point, even the Switch. I don't know what Microsoft's strategy is here. Just a few years ago, it looked like they were going to have a strong lineup right about now, but here we are with Phantom Dust 2 and Scalebound cancelled, and Crackdown 3 delayed for the umpteenth time. If you look at sales numbers, Xbox One is getting destroyed, and it looks as though that's not going to change anytime soon. Next up is Nintendo, who I didn't cover at all. The big news from their Direct was all about Smash 5, which is indeed a new game and is being called Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The surprise here was that the roster will include every character ever to be featured in a Smash game, even Snake. Just like Smash 4, it's going to have GameCube controller support, and thankfully the Wii U adapter works with the Switch. And here's the crazy part, the game is coming out December 7th, a lot sooner than I was expecting. I mentioned before that I wasn't a huge Smash fan, and that's still true, but I kind of forgot that Smash 4's online component was basically unusable and was the reason why I didn't play the game too much. So I have to admit that now even I'm a little excited for this to come out. The only thing that was a real letdown for me was the limited amount of new characters. Off the top of my head, I can only think of Ridley and the Inklings. Yeah, I know they're bringing everyone back, but part of the fun is seeing what new characters will come into the fold. I suppose it is still possible that there are more new characters, and Nintendo is intentionally holding them back to maximize the amount of shine this game gets pre-release, and I'm sure this game will be getting just as many, probably more DLC characters than Smash 4. I don't think this was in the Direct itself, but Nintendo also decided to drop the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion out of nowhere the day after. Despite the focus of Splatoon being multiplayer, the Octo expansion is a set of single-player missions. That might sound kind of lame, but I played through all of it and it's pretty great. Most of the levels are quite challenging, and it uses the game's mechanics in clever and unexpected ways. If you're a fan of the game, I definitely recommend it. Outside of those two games, the rest of the announcements were very underwhelming. There was some other DLC stuff for games that I don't care about, and some ports of smaller games. Everyone seems to be giving them a pass because of Smash, but for me, that doesn't really make up for it. I was kind of expecting at least a teaser trailer for Metroid Prime 4, but that didn't happen, which is probably indicative of how far out that game is. I think they could have salvaged things here by announcing at least one or two more big ports coming over to Switch, maybe Xenoblade X, a Metroid Prime collection, or even a 3D Zelda game. I really wanted to see them keep up the momentum that they had in the Switch's first year, and for most Nintendo fans, it seems like Smash at the end of the year is enough to do that, but for me, it's not quite enough. Actually, there's also one more thing from Nintendo. Fortnite is now on the Switch. This was not a surprise, seeing as it was leaked beforehand, but things turned bad real quick. Despite this being Nintendo's announcement, it wasn't them who dropped the ball here. It turns out that if you play Fortnite on PS4, your Epic Games account, along with the purchases made on said account, are locked to PS4. PS4 users are not allowed to play with Switch and Xbox One players, but they are allowed to play with PC and mobile players. We're beginning to see more and more cross-platform play support, so it's a big issue when the console that currently has the largest user base by far is not willing to play nice with everyone else. I don't really understand the motive here either. This ex-Sony guy says it's all about the money, but does Sony really think someone will invest in microtransactions twice? I don't see a scenario where someone started playing Fortnite on another platform and then goes on PS4 to create a new account and then proceeds to invest in skins on what is likely a secondary account for them. Apparently this has been Sony's stance forever, but it's becoming more of an issue now since there's probably a sizable amount of people who started on PS4 and also have a Switch for portable use. In my experience, Xbox One and PS4 is not a common combo because they're seen as Coke and Pepsi, where you just pick one, and even if someone owns both, one of them is likely their primary and the other is just for that platform's exclusives. And really, what would be the reason to play on both? The experience is mostly identical. Now, a Switch and a PS4 is a much more common combo, and since they offer two distinctly different use cases, it makes sense for someone to use a PS4 for TV play and use a Switch for its portability. This is the kind of shit that stops me from liking Sony. It used to be that Nintendo and Xbox were known for their anti-consumer decisions, but now it really seems like Sony has taken up that mantle. Since we're on Sony already, I'll just give my final thoughts on their conference now. In terms of presentation, it was truly terrible. A real mess. I don't know how it happened, but they better figure that out before their next event because it was a serious disservice to the otherwise pretty great stuff that was shown. In fact, I would go as far as to say that Sony delivered the best overall stuff this E3. Unlike Microsoft's event, there was a good balance of first and third-party games, with most of the games being shown in depth. They had their 4 exclusive games, all of which are substantial and will likely do very well, but the problem was that only one of them, Spider-Man, has a release day, let alone year. The Last of Us 2 is clearly using Uncharted 4 as a base, so I'd say that's probably a 2019 game. I know that Sucker Punch has been working on Ghost of Tsushima for a while, but the game still seems so new to me, and it's radically different from anything they've ever made, so that's just up in the air as far as I'm concerned. Then Death Stranding. What the hell is going on with that? I 100% expected a release window, and I'm genuinely shocked that we didn't get one. Why did Kojima talk about the breakneck speed at which it was being developed, and then tease an announcement that would further surprise everyone in 2018? Is he just trolling at this point? The gameplay trailer itself was a trick in a sense, since everyone, myself included, was expecting explosive action. There's still Gamescom, Paris Games Week, and the VGAs, and the ever-dreadful PlayStation experience, but you'd think if they had the big news to drop, that they would drop it here at their biggest event. Fortunately, they did have the third-party stuff to balance things out, and I personally wasn't expecting anything on that front. The Resident Evil 2 remake is the big headline, and that's great, but I'm fascinated by Remedy's new game Control. These are the guys that made Alan Wake and Quantum Break, the latter of which seems to be an influence on this game. Interestingly, what was shown focused on the gameplay, in contrast to their usual focus on story. I think this is going to be a smaller game than Quantum Break or Alan Wake, but it still looks quite good. Finally, I didn't get my PS4 Pro with a UHD player, and if it doesn't make an appearance before Black Friday this year, then I assume that ship has sailed. It feels like PS5 is on the way, as all of the first-party games shown were already announced. So I think that next year, they'll reveal the PS5 along with some of the games their studios have been working on for that console. Did Bethesda really need to have this presentation? I was definitely too soft on them in my video. They should have just done a Nintendo Direct. I mean, this thing was kind of a fuck-up, and I think that I only had the impression that it was something other than that because Todd was there. So it was around 90 minutes long, and they had Rage 2 gameplay, a logo for Doom 2, some DLC for Prey, a $40 Wolfenstein spin-off, details on Fallout 76, an Elder Scrolls cell phone game, and then logos for Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. I went back to last year's video, and in that video, I asked the question, does Bethesda have enough to warrant a big yearly event at E3? And after mulling this year's over, I think the answer is a resounding no. Rage 2 was revealed and shown off ahead of time, Prey DLC and a small Wolfenstein spin-off are not big announcements, and no one tunes into E3 to hear about a cell phone game. Then Doom 2. That's a big announcement that a lot of people have been waiting for. They didn't show gameplay, but they promised it would be at QuakeCon later this summer. Why? Why would you do that? It would have gone a long way if they showed it here. What that leaves is all the BGS stuff sans Elder Scrolls Blades. Fallout 76 is not a big, beefy BGS game in the same way that Fallout 4 or Skyrim are, and I think they would have been better off talking about it in the Nintendo Direct format. Then Starfield and ES6. Yes, it's very exciting, especially Starfield, which I've been talking about for years, but it was just logos, and it came off as an apology for Fallout 76. I'm going to be completely honest here. Fallout 76 does not look good. They showed a ton of the game, and yet I feel as though I've seen nothing. And that's probably because the game is nothing. Despite them saying the game has a story, from what I've seen, it has no NPCs at all. So that storytelling is purely environmental. Since this is their first online game, I fully expect it to be straight up broken. The weapon balance, the nuke mechanics, the in-game economy, and of course the creation engine running online. I've always had a soft spot for Bethesda, but I don't think this E3 thing is working out well for them. EA had a lot to prove this year, and just like I said in my pre-game video, they knew that they had to have something Star Wars, so they talked about Respawn's project. Instead of showing a teaser trailer or even a logo like Todd did, they instead had an awkward interview with Vince Zampella, who was sitting in the crowd. The game is called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and as the title would suggest, the game is taking place after the fallout of Episode 3. Aside from that, the only other information known is that it's a third-person game and comes out holiday 2019. They didn't even say if it was multiplayer, single-player, or both. I mean, they didn't even say what platforms it would be on. If they can't give out basic information like that, or even show us a logo, I don't see how it's possible for this game to come out in little over a year. Their other game is of course Battlefield 5, and instead of showing footage at the press conference that they paid for, they opted instead to reveal the gameplay footage on a YouTube playlist after the show ended. The footage revealed a game that is almost exactly what I imagined it would be, a slightly updated version of Battlefield 1 with World War II weapons. What this footage also confirmed was that my fears of the new building system, fortifications, were not unfounded. In the gameplay, I saw sandbag walls erected in seconds and turrets placed with ease. A designer at DICE described the system as a replacement for BF1's gas mask. That is to say that every player, regardless of class, will have equal access to these mechanics. I'm not thrilled about this. I think it will disrupt the flow of gameplay in a negative way and will most definitely be abused. What is there to say about Ubisoft? Their big game Beyond Good and Evil 2 had gameplay shown, but only behind closed doors. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is bringing back naval combat, but outside of that, it appears to be a retread of Origins with a Greek coat of paint. And then The Division 2. What are they doing with this? It looks like an expansion pack to the original game rather than a massive reworking, and I was under the impression that the original game was not well received. Overall, I think we did a hell of a lot better than last year's E3, and I've got 4 new games that I'm looking forward to. Cyberpunk 2077, Ghost of Tsushima, Control, and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. My god, it looks so good. I'm still dying to play and know more about Death Stranding, but I don't know how much more footage from it I can be shown without having a date or even year attached to it. And here's a little bit of advice. Sony, fix your presentation. I'll say it again, it was awful. Xbox, sort out your first-party stuff and fix the Microsoft Store. Ubisoft, if you're just going to show extended gameplay at someone else's show, do you really need to pay for your own? EA, you guys had the world on your shoulders, and as expected, you dropped it into a black hole. Square Enix, if you're going to show your one game at 2 other conferences, do you really need to pay for your own? Bethesda, I know you think these yearly conferences are cementing your dominance, but they're not. They're really embarrassing, and you should only book them on a I have more than 2 big announcements basis. That's all I got for E3, guys. Let me know your rankings and your favorite stuff down below, and until next time, thanks for watching.